We are delighted that you're joining us for another podcast of Wake Up Aligned, and it is the podcast for chiropractors where we get to talk about chiropractic lifestyle, and topics of interest. You can contact us through our email, and that is mailbag@amcfamily.com.
Back to another episode of Wake Up Aligned. I am your host, Tom Owen, and I am here for part 2. If you, I knew we were going to do this.
It feels like we were just here.
Yeah, imagine that. Come to think about it, I think we are. So I'm here with Dr. Greg Miller, and we're gonna jump right back into where we were last week on the key components of what the broken system is. Of almost every chiropractor we know comes looking for one thing, and they find out that the answer is really found in a way that they didn't understand, they didn't see, they couldn't comprehend. And that's really in basically what we call retention.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right. So we're going to spend today talking about that, following, adding to what we started last week. But before doing that, my favorite part of the show is always celebrating our heroes.
I would be happy to share the first one today, Tom. I would be happy to do that.
I bet you'd be happy, but I'm not going to let you.
That's what I figured.
There you go. But no. Actually, if you have one, I've got them teed up. I've got my favorites from the week, but do you have one?
I do. You know what? I had a mentoring call this week with, look, I probably tell all my docs this, that, I really do enjoy working with, but there's just something special about this guy. I was his first coach when he came on board with AMC back in 2009, I believe. And now I've come full circle, and I'm currently mentoring with him. But Dr. Zach Wilson up in Waterloo, Iowa, and the guy is he's just something special. He loves to teach at the boot camps. He loves to instruct. He's got such a depth of understanding of this system that we're going to be talking about today. He's just got a tremendous depth, got a great family. Charisse obviously is probably the one behind all that, but they're just I'm just really, really proud of him. But the reason I wanted to bring him up and thought I'd kick it off with him here is that he has, for the last several months, and I've fallen short. I didn't look at exactly how many months, but it's well into 9 months. They have been 100%. His new patients have been 100% compliant with his treatment recommendation plan. And that is impressive, considering that, he is a CBP guy. He's a diplomate in that program, lots of therapy, lots of really impressive changes. He does Scoli bracing. He has really zeroed in to what his technique can do and what he can offer. And that passion is just really apparent. And I know that because they have been literally short a staff person almost the entire time that he's been turning in these kind of numbers. And I've been telling him, I think maybe you're not short a staff person. I think you just maybe are in the zone like you should be right now. But anyway, just proud of that guy.
And again, you said the whole family.
Yeah.
They are so easy to root for.
Yeah, absolutely.
They are just the best of the best. I mean, their model of practice, their character, their integrity, the virtue of their family, those kids.
Yep.
They're all the real deal across.
They're doing it right. Yep.
And they deserve it all.
Yep.
They're very, very proud of them. And I can't believe you just said 2009.
Yeah.
Man.
And Charisse is doing a great job as a CA coach.
Yeah.
She's
having fun.
And she's having a ball. So yeah, they're entrenched for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to take a stab at a few and then I'll throw it back to you. I know you got a list over there.
Got a list.
I can see your paperwork over there. So I'll take a stab at a few here and just fire them off pretty quick. One of them is super proud of this young lady, Dr. Suarez, opened up and just had her ribbon cutting.
Yep.
And Dr. Suarez, I apologize right now. I was going to surprise you and I was going to be at your ribbon cutting. And then I had a family emergency with my daughter. And I was literally like looking at my daughter when she was riding in my truck with me. I was like glaring over at her going, you had to have this. I was going to be at Dr. Suarez's ribbon cutting and surprise her, but I had to take care of my daughter.
She forgives you.
Does she?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm super proud of Dr. Suarez. And just recently, she had a ribbon cutting, but she's been open. And she just recently, we celebrated that she had 4 out of 4 care plans accept in one day.
Oh, great.
And 2 of those were what we call the discount. You know, the 10% discount.
10%.
Upfront discount.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm just super proud of her. She's had a lot of challenges, and she's such a good heart. And I'm just want to give her that shout out.
Awesome.
Another one that's just got my heart, always has, is Dr. Taylor Webb out in Texas. It's funny why. It's just because I remember. I remember meeting Dr. Taylor Webb. She got married since I met her, but I remember her coming to her first fab down in Orlando, and I could just see it in her. I mean, from the moment I met her, I was like, this girl is a go-getter, and she's not going to be deterred. And you know what? I'm glad she's a go-getter because it hasn't been all that easy for her.
Yeah.
And she's made some missteps along the way. And there's been some challenges, and, you know, there's some different things that we would have done, could have done different, would have done different. But here's the point. We celebrate the victories, right? And you
Absolutely.
never, ever let go. What's the one thing I don't ever want to let go of? I don't ever want to let go of my experiences. I don't take anything that I did something wrong or did something right. There's something to learn out of all of it. You know, we all are an evidence. We are all just a result of our choices that we've made. The point is not to have regret about any of those choices. The point is to learn to move forward. And that's what she has done all along. And she just recently, Dr. Horrell shared that she officially doubled.
Oh, that's outstanding.
Collections. Yep. So super proud of her. Hopefully she's listening and heard that shout out, but I'm very proud of you, young lady. I remember starting down there in Orlando those years ago, and you were still a student at Sherman, and here you are, and I'm super proud of you. Last but not least, and then I'm going to throw it to you, Dr. Greg, and then let's just jump into some content.
Let's do it.
But I cannot go without mentioning the doctors, plural, Doctors Elias, out in Abilene, Texas. Again, Right Starters, and they did not have an easy road either to getting open. They had some significant setbacks, more than the average person does, but they were go-getters from the start, and they have been just gangbusters since they opened. But I want to say that they're just under 2 years into practice now, 2021, somewhere in there. That sounds right.
Yeah. But
let me just tell you this, just the most recent stats that I've got here. Not sure exactly when this show will be released, but in May of 2023, these rock stars had 70 new patients, 1,056 PVs, 81 in service, 79 collected.
That's 2 years in practice, folks.
Yeah. And here's the best one. Of those 70 new patients, 44 of them were referrals.
Oh, wow. Now that's impressive.
See, folks, that's what I say when I say a self-sustaining stress-free referral practice.
Yep.
You get the referrals, you get the retention, and you just get to have fun, right? And those of you that have been in practice 15, 20 years and you've never experienced that, just think about that. How blessed is that young couple? They've never had to deal with all of that. They don't know any better. All they've learned is the very system that we wanted to talk about today, Greg. Systematic approach that leads to referrals and retention. That's what the aligned AMC principles are. It gives you a predictable result. And retention is one of them. And the longer someone is retained, the more likely, if you're utilizing the components of the system, more likely they are to refer. right?
Absolutely.
So I'm going to throw it back at you. I know you had another shout out, but
I do have one, and I'm going to circle around and talk a little bit about referrals with this, but I know here's another Texas doctor down in Seguin, Texas, Dr. Dominic Scaramosi. You know this doc well. I'm going to share a quick story that I don't know that you know, but I remember back, he started, correct? I believe that's right.
I'll say yes to that.
I remember.
That's like 9 years ago.
9 years ago, his Right Start coach, it was a Saturday, called me and said, I need help. And I said, okay, what's going on? And the Right Start coach, she said, I've got this Right Starter that is, he's all upset about this x-ray that he's got. He doesn't know how to relate back to the patient what he's found on the x-ray, or how to have a conversation about x-ray, or I don't even remember the specifics about it. But I got on the phone on a Saturday afternoon with Dominic Scaramosi, Dr. Scaramosi, and we had a long conversation. I think it might have been that it was a re-x-ray. We're going to talk about this later, aren't we? It was a re-x-ray, and he didn't see any change on that x-ray. And he was upset about that because that's the big fear, right? We'll get into that. But I remember this doc, fresh out of school, just the confidence level was just not there. Let's jump forward 9 years, and this guy is knocking down well over $1 million in practice right now. He's got an associate in there. Dr. Johnson's working with him. I think, if I remember right, every single year for the last 8 years, he has grown in that practice by at least $100,000, $100,000 plus every year.
Correct.
Now, we're not here about the money, right? That's the shavings of a good carpenter's tools hard at work. I've heard you say that so many times. It's certainly a nice benefit to what he's doing down there. But here's where I believe the rubber really meets the road. Dr. Scaramosi is so in love with what he's doing and with this profession of chiropractic and with Aligned. He is flying 3 guests to the Orlando meeting in July to come and experience the Aligned family, to see what we're all about. And I guess I'm talking to every single doctor that's listening to this podcast right now. What are you doing? Have you gone down the street and knocked on that chiropractor's door and said, hey, come join me at an Aligned meeting? Do you realize that your story matters? Because Dr. Scaramosi has a story that matters. And he has clearly reached out to those doctors. He's got them. He's bringing them to the meeting. I can't wait. I can't wait for the opportunity to meet them at the summit. Jack Berg, I'm gonna go sideways again for just a second. Jack Berg, he's been around AMC just for a couple of years, but I think he's responsible for 6 or 5 referrals in the last month have directly come from Dr. Berg out there in Wyoming. Is he in Montana? Montana. 2 students, and I believe 3 in-practice doctors have found their way to Aligned. And basically, they were watching him. I ask the question all the time, who's been watching you? You don't always even know. But these docs were seeing some of the testimonials and some of the stories that Dr. Berg was sharing, and they reached out to him. They said, what have you found? What is it? And these aren't small practices, but these doctors are seeing the success that Dr. Berg is experiencing. And I guarantee it's the same thing with Dr. Scaramosi. They're watching that doctor just love his practice and love his patients and love chiropractic. It's a foundation of who we are.
And here's a great thing to point out. Dr. Scaramosi is not a salesman.
Oh, no. Goodness,
right?
no.
And Jack Berg is not a salesman. You brought them up.
Yep.
So I'm going to talk about them. That they're just guys with hearts.
Yep,
right? And they're not selling anything. They're just saying, hey, if I can do it, you can do it. And not only can you do it, you should do it. And they're just like Scaramosi. I don't know if he wanted everybody to know that, but everybody does now.
Yeah, well,
he's doing it because he's got the right heart. And then he's leaving it. Hey, look, your job, listener, is to be Dominic Scaramosi.
Absolutely.
Your job is, if you've been blessed, we are blessed to be a blessing. Fly them. Let them experience it. Just put them in the seats and let the rest take the course. Let them hear it, and then their ears will either be open and to receive or that won't. And guess what? When they get there, those of you that know me, you know how I teach. I'm not selling a thing.
Yeah.
Right? They're grown adults. They either know they have issues or they don't, or they recognize it, or there's something different about this group. Or the point is, don't judge it. Don't sell it. Just get them there.
You get them there. The summit.
They need to hear it.
The summit experience. Just remember, whoever's listening, just remember your first boot camp. Remember your first summit meeting. Remember how you walked away and you felt like, I have a wheelbarrow full. I had a doctor tell me that. I felt like I had a wheelbarrow full of stuff that I could put to work on Monday morning in my practice. There are principles and found behind every single thing that we do and that we teach at a summit has a principle behind it. And that's the difference. That's the difference between what an aligned summit will do for you and what everything else that's out there. I mean, the bells and the whistles and the rah-rah and the cheering and all that kind of stuff. That's fine. But you get back to your practice, that goes away awfully fast. It's like adrenaline, right? I mean, it hits and then it's gone. What you're going to experience and what every single guest that you fly or you drive or you walk with to get them to a boot camp is going to experience is what is the magic, the secret in the sauce. It's right there at the summit.
Yeah. So the point is, appreciate you bringing up that story about Dr. Scaramosi, right? But that's the heart. Isn't that the heart of the AMC family?
Absolutely
it's the one thing that separates us, man.
Yep,
it's the one thing after all these years. Oh gosh, I can tell stories. I can get going on a soapbox, but it's the one thing, that family culture and that heart. So I appreciate you bringing that up. But folks, I will end it with that, and then I want to segue into some subject matter of content that we want to follow up with from last week. But bottom line is, who's been watching you? Who's watching you, and what are you going to do about it? Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
And do you have the same heart as Scaramosi? The odds are, if you're in the AMC family, I tend to think, yes, you do. Now just take the next step and get them in contact. They can get in contact with you, Dr. Greg. I know they can contact Jeff.
Jeff Reniger. Yep.
Jeff Reniger. You can just send them you can send them straight to the website, and boom, they'll be instantaneously connected with you and or Jeff, and let that take its course.
And know with great confidence that they will be well cared for in that process. We are not the typical hard sell stuff. We just don't even know how to do that.
No, that's not in our nature.
It's not going to happen.
So let's go into let's following up on last week's subject matter. But you just said something. I want to just hit a couple of real quick things. You just said summits. Mm-hmm. All right. So I know we talked about Scaramosi bringing people to summits, but let's not miss the fact that summits is where it's at.
No, for sure.
All right. So members, those of you that are listeners, hey, tell me if I'm wrong. We've got 3 left for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
As of this recording.
Yes, that's right. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You better get serious about it.
Yeah. We're in the second half of the year.
Yeah.
As where we are. Folks, whatever 2024 is going to be and however you're going to end the year, it's going to happen at summits. I know the content that we've put together. I know what's coming. You got to make it a priority. If you have a name badge, if you have member behind your name, then you need to be at the final 3. Really, you really need to be at all 6 every year. Just go ahead and say 2024. My commitment to 2024 is going to be, I'm going to be at all summits, because the numbers don't lie. If you're at the summits consistently, 6 summits a year, tell me if I'm wrong, Greg. If I'm lying, strike me down right now. 6 summits and do 1 to 2 certified training center visits a year. What happens to those practices?
Well, they explode.
They grow. I mean,
there's
it's
no
statistically
way they wouldn't.
It's statistically backed up to show that. So folks, I just want to make that shout out just to summits in general. You have a responsibility to yourself, to your community, to your staff. Be in attendance, be at those live events. Then also, last but not least, I just want to shout out to all the various people that oversee the programs that are, you mentioned it earlier, the CA coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Those CA coaches, Sharice Wilson, that team, they're doing phenomenal work in that CA coaching. In fact, I think, I don't remember the exact numbers. I want to say there's 30 to 40%, somewhere in that ballpark, of the AMC membership have the CA coaching as a part of their program.
I've never looked at that stat. I don't.
Well, I can just tell you, it's somewhere in that neighborhood. Here's two things for everyone else that's listening. If you're one of the 60 to 70%, the 30 to 40% that aren't, you need to think about that, right? Whatever that percentage is, you need to think about it. If you don't have CA coaching, Dad used to have a thing he used to do. He'd say, just write FOOL on the butt of your hand and then stamp your forehead, right? Because here's the ticket. Every 100% of everybody that has the CA coaching in their practices, the practices have grown 15 to 20%.
Yeah, well beyond the cost. Every
one of them.
Yep.
100%. Think about that. Now just do your stats and look and figure out, wow, if my practice grew without any other extra effort, if it grew 15 to 20% above what it's doing now without any more work, what would that mean to me? That's what you're looking at. And then another thing that's a telltale sign that it works is they have nearly 100% retention in the program. In other words, every member that's come to the end of their first initial installment with the coaches of that program are re-upping.
Yeah.
So it kind of tells you, folks, you're missing out if you're not taking advantage of these programs. There's all kinds of programs. You've got Third Mile Bridge. We'll probably have Don McGuire on here sometime soon to kind of talk about that.
That's a great thing.
That's a need, filling a need. Find a need, fill it.
Yep.
And that is a big one that they've put together. And they've been doing that for 7 years, filling the financial components, whether it's working capital, brokerage services, alerting your numbers, budgeting, figuring out budgets, all those things. They've been doing that for 6-7 years, but they've actually compiled it into a complete program that it's really neat. That's really, really neat stuff. But we'll talk about that later. I don't know. We probably took up half the show right there doing our introduction. Yeah, Snacks is over there telling me we don't have all that much time.
Poor
so
Snacks.
Probably part 3 is coming up. Don't even start with that. He just flashed through 7 minutes. Are you kidding me? You're going to give me 7 minutes to talk about retention?
Well, it's a good thing this is part 2.
Yeah, there's going to be a part 3 for sure. So hopefully, folks, you're getting something out of it. So Dr. Greg, let's jump back into, we talked last show about the fact that almost everybody that we've ever met.
Yep.
They all come with this broken model in their head thinking new patients is the answer.
Yep.
Right? You and I know that the ultimate answer is the transformation is found in when they can figure out that retention, not necessarily the new patients, but retaining what the business that you have. It's one of the reasons why for years and years and years, we'd have somebody show up to AMC and they could join, they'd become a new member, right? And how many times, Greg, over the years have we seen that somebody joins and 60, 90 days later, they double?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
They're doing $15,000 in collections. They never have been able to grow beyond that. And then they go from 15 to 30,000 in just a matter of 2 or 3 months. And everybody goes, oh, well, gosh, AMC must have some phenomenal marketing, because how else could they double in 90 days? They must have gone out and done a bunch of spinal screenings. Well, as a mentor, our general rule is that as a new member is not allowed to advertise for the first 60 to 90 days.
Yeah, absolutely.
So folks, listeners, put that together. Our general rule is our mentors aren't allowed to let the new members market for 60 to 90 days. Yet we've got new members that are doubling in 60 to 90 days. Something must be different. the difference is that all we're doing is simplistically, initially implementing pieces of the system that's plugging so many holes so fast that if you learn to keep the business that you've already got coming in, you'll double your practice. And it's been like that for decades.
Yeah.
Okay. So retention is the answer. And sometimes that answer can come very quickly, but it's the mastery of an overall system that allows you to have that dream practice.
I oftentimes find myself thinking about, I think on part one, you mentioned faith. You mentioned we go to the same church. I find myself thinking about, in the word, it talks about if you build your house on sand, on a sandy foundation, and the wind comes and the storm comes and it takes the foundation away, that sand just washes away. Well, there's nothing to support the house. But if you build it on a stone, on rock, on a solid foundation, let the winds come, let the Obamacares come, let the HIPAA compliance stuff. I'm dating myself now, but let those winds that come along come when you have a practice that is solid in its foundation, which is the system. If you, I think I said it on the first call, if you, or first podcast, if you don't have a plan for your patient, they're going to make their own. And that's going to be what as a profession, we've trained them to do, which is, we talked about it last time, it's pain. They base everything on pain, and that's not the patient's fault. Don't misunderstand that. The patient's just been trained improperly, or we're not giving them the information that they need to make a decent decision. And that's really, I think, with the time that we have left, what we need to talk about is, what are the things inside of a system like the Align system that help the doctors? And you used the word, I don't think it was effortlessly, but you used a word, essentially it's easy to do, right? There's no rocket science to any of this, but so many of the things that I have on my list, doctors don't want to do because they've either tried it before and it's failed for them, or they just simply don't know how to implement it into their practice. And when you do implement these things into your practice and you start getting serious about doing them, all of a sudden you shore that foundation up and your practice is running with great confidence. And guess what? You fall in love with it again. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where we're headed, right?
Yeah. I mean, Grant, we can't teach the system on a show. And in fact, this show is not for teaching necessarily. But I mean, I don't know how many times I can tell you when I evaluate a practice and just get my eyes on it, right? I can look and see that that retention is where's retention live? Where inside what I know of how to run a practice, where does retention lie? Retention lies in the foundational components, which you just pointed out, which is the expectations between the doctor-patient relationship. Well, where are those established? Those are going to be established somewhere in your first 2 to 3 day procedurals, right? They're also going to be found in your education.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay? So some people know that inside of Aligned as a POC. Look, don't do a POC. Don't have diagnostics. There's your one, right? If the monkey's on you and you're constantly selling chiropractic and you don't have the test indicate, the x-ray show and the test indicate, okay, then you're selling, you're convincing. Guess what, folks? If you don't have solid grounded diagnostics in place to establish the reason to come in more than what they're feeling, then guess what? You're never going to be able to break that. That's never going to change until you have that monkey off your back to where you can put the monkey on the back of look, the x-ray show and the test indicate. You want to sit here and argue with this x-ray, I'll leave the room. I'll come back in 7-8 minutes. You tell me who won the argument. All I'm telling you is what the x-ray show. So when that monkey is off there, that gives you an opportunity to give a reason to come beyond. So when I think about systematically and I'm looking at a components, CER diagnostics are going to be a piece. POC, when I see that and somebody says, well, I don't do a POC, no one will ever show up. I can't get them to show up. I don't know what to say. I'm afraid to speak in public. Look, you're afraid to talk to your patients. I'm not asking you to go out and do health talks in the public. I'm talking about you talking to your patients, right? You have a fear of that. There's a problem. Well, let's address the problem. But when a POC is not present, I don't have to look any further. You can do a great CER, you can do great diagnostics, you can set great expectations, but without that follow-up, without that commitment components that are found in doing the right POC, not a POC. Notice I said that, folks. Doing the right POC, not a POC. Don't just do a generic one. You got to do it right. There's got to be components in place. But when you do that, you have a better chance of a longer retention. And then the third one I would say that is a big one, which is reevaluation.
Oh my gosh.
The timed reevaluation. Mm-hmm. These doctors that don't want to do it. And I think I'll throw that one to you to play with, because I know you've got a good example we talked about just the other day.
I do.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll just let you know,
it's interesting. And re-exam and re-X-ray fall into reevaluation, right? That's what you're talking about. And it's amazing when we start looking at the stats, how miserably short our chiropractors fall in that area. And we know the reason why. I mean, the reason why is because there is a fear that we are going to take that follow-up X-ray in 12 visits, and what? There's going to be no change. And that it's interesting, because even if that happens, even if that's the worst case scenario, and we end up with an X-ray that doesn't show any change, the system, right, what we teach our doctors to do absolutely gives the confidence to make that happen. To make that conversation happen. I had a mentoring call this morning with Dr. Ed Rack, one of my favorite docs to talk to. And if you don't know who he is, Dr. Rack was an associate with Dr. Kale, the knee, chest, upper cervical doc.
That's right. I forgot that. That's right.
He grew up in chiropractic with one of the greats we mentioned on the first call, the greats. I mean, those guys don't ever think about this kind of stuff. They just, all they're doing, they're bloodhounds for subluxation, right? That's all they're doing. And I asked Dr. Rack this morning, I said, when was the last time you took a re-exam or I'm sorry, did a re-X-ray and had no change? Now, keep in mind, it's an upper cervical office, right? And he just said, no, I don't think I've ever had that happen. I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I had no change on the X-ray. I said, okay, what if you did? And he paused for a second, and what came out of his mouth, he goes, well, I would just tell the patient, I told you it's going to take 90 days, and you're only a third of the way through this. And
so where would that come from? Real quick, if the listener that's out there going, well, why would you say that? Well, but back to what we said earlier. Your expectations. Yeah. The expectations in the first 3 visits. That's why you have to put the puzzle together. You can't just take pieces here, pieces there, and go, oh, I like that report of findings, but I don't like that POC. I don't like this. No, when they put the pieces together, they all fit together to give you the same effect.
They absolutely do. Absolutely. I think that's great, because it all builds, right? I mean, we talk about the 10-visit checklist and the different steps that we give our doctors to tell their patients. It's all, it's closing the gate, right? I mean, it's patient compliance. It's patient compliance at its best leads to retention. But he also said, if I was in a situation where the X-ray hasn't changed or the re-exam isn't showing any improvement, he goes, as a doctor, as a physician, I have to look at what I'm doing. Am I one segment too high? Am I one segment too low? That's where the real challenge lies. That's why I want these doctors who are listening to this podcast to get past that point where all they're thinking about is the stack of bills that are on the desk, and they're really, really focusing in on the results that their patients are getting. They're excited about getting that next set of X-rays taken so that they can see, are we on the right track for this patient? And that excitement is contagious for the patient. So when you're doing that the right way, it works.
So you're saying clinically, right? Clinically, it's better to do a reevaluation and a re-exam in case adjustments to what your recommendations need to be made.
Absolutely.
So it's better for the patient to do it. Yet why do doctors not do the re-exam, x-ray?
Because there might not be any change.
Because they're fearful.
Yeah, they're fearful.
There might not be any change,
Yeah.
but when actuality, you're doing a disservice to the patient by not doing the re-exam, x-ray clinically.
Absolutely.
In case you have to make an adjustment. And if you do, which in most cases there is a change, we didn't say a full reversal of curve or whatever.
Oh my gosh,
right?
no.
That takes time, but making tweaks, making adjustments clinically along the way gives them a better chance for long-term results. And it's a confirmation, which I'm going to go back to my side of it, right? Just for a second. I told you I can look at an evaluation and I can look and see, oh, you're not doing re-exam, re-x-rays, you're not doing reevaluations. I don't have to look any further, Greg. I literally can take the paper, put it in my file, set it down and go, okay, now I know how now I know how much potential this practice has. Did y'all hear that? I don't have to do any more work. I already know that your potential is locked and capped, because as long as you don't do reevaluations and re-diagnostics of some form, there's no question there's going to be a significant dropout rate somewhere between 10 and 20 visits. A great personality, like maybe a Dan Yachter, right? For those of you that know Dan Yachter, phenomenal personality,
great guy,
great communicator,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Guess what? He's still got a dropout rate. If he's not doing that reevaluation, I don't have to look any further. I know that there's going to be a retention. Why? Okay, everybody wants to know, well, why is that, Tom? Because you can't do that good of a report of findings. The further and further you get away from their urgency, hello, everybody. The further and further you get away from their urgency was at the beginning, and the expectation and the commitment was made at the beginning. And the further you get away from that report of findings and the further you get away from their urgency, and you're not doing a reassessment, you're kidding yourself. You're kidding yourself.
What if?
They're going to drop out somewhere along that, no matter what the relationship didn't fall apart.
No.
The need fell apart. Go ahead.
So what if we have a doctor who's doing the AMC, the Align system? He's doing the system, following our the protocols that we recommend. He does a report that we call it an R2, and he tells them in that report that he's going to do a reevaluation in 10 to 12 days. And he says he's going to do that, right? Or she, but they never do it. Do you think the patient forgot that you were going to do a re-x-ray? No, they didn't forget. You just took the legs completely out from under your authority in that relationship because you didn't follow through and do the thing that helps you be that better doctor.
Don't ever give an expectation or tell them something to do and not
You're going to follow through. Yeah.
Not follow through and either do it yourself or make sure that they do it. That's patient compliance 101.
That's 101. There's two more that Dr. Rack and I went through this morning that I want doctors to hear because I think they're really, really important. So we're back to an x-ray not showing either any change or the kind of change that you thought, I'm quoting here, it should show. There's nothing wrong with the patient hearing, well, what this comes down to is this condition was more serious than either one of us realized it was. And then, if you really believe in what you're doing and why you're doing it, I'm really, really glad you found your way into this office because we specialize in tough cases and you are a tough case. Hang in there with me. We're going to get this figured out. I mean, it's all in the presentation. It's all in how
it's all in your messaging.
Yeah, absolutely it is.
And are you lying?
No.
Because the first person that says, well, that's manipulation. No, that's being honest. Isn't that being honest? If the case is not responding, and do you really walk on water? Greg, I know you're good.
Yeah.
But for God's sakes, the person has had this issue going on for 7 to 10 years, has got a degenerative process, is in phase 2 of that process, and you're supposed to walk in on water and just fix all their problems in 6 visits? Come on, folks. Stop kidding yourself. You're embarrassing yourself, and you're embarrassing chiropractic, and you're embarrassing me.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm just saying, let's stop kidding ourselves. Stop trying to make serious conditions into minor problems, right? And a subluxation, yes, a subluxation is a serious condition.
It's a very serious condition.
All right. I'm telling you, boy, I'm about to get on my soapbox and start preaching, and the producer's sitting here saying, wrap it up. Good gracious. We got good stuff going on here, man.
We do. But I think, when it comes down to with retention, and, there's all kinds of different things that we could talk about that exist inside of a system like Aligned. But there was one thing, and I think we could probably close on this. There was one thing that you said to me when we were talking just the other day. You mentioned that you talked about being a taint nothing doctor, and I'm not sure we really addressed that today. And I'd really love to hear you reshare what you were talking about. I mean, your dad. There's a 3-part audio I think that we have that talks about taint nothing, and I remember him telling me. I think it was him that told me, or maybe you did, but back in the day. We go back to that re-X-ray. Wasn't he doing X-rays every 10 visits, no matter what?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So in my head, when I think about that, when I said I was looking at that evaluation and I can tell where the dropout rate is, absolutely you should be reevaluating every 10 visits, every 30 days. And you don't even have to, I mean, there comes a point in the care where, you can do spot shot X-rays, and, if you're concerned about radiation, and we got to a point to where, in the 30th, 50th, 60th visit, we wouldn't even necessarily charge for it. But the point was, it wasn't about that. It was about the retention of the patient. It was about the communication of why are we continuing?
Yeah.
So absolutely. And a taint nothing doctor goes with what I was just saying a few minutes ago. A subluxation is a serious condition. And you're kidding yourself. And we are, as a profession, are kidding ourselves being these pain doctors. They're bringing serious issues. Pain's the last thing to show up, first thing to go. But the underlying issue you talked about a few minutes ago, a reevaluation process gives you a chance, to opportunity to look to see, well, am I even on the right segment?
Yeah,
do I need to adjust? Am I messing with the compensation when the subluxation's down here? That's the valuation. That's the seriousness. Stop treating it. And like we mentioned on the last show about the whole pain model is a broken model. It's just a broken model, folks. I just don't know how to tell you. Yet our whole profession is built on it. And all they've done that they've changed since the 90s is they have figured out these niche programs to where you can squeeze $10,000 care plans into the same broken model. The underlying model is still broken underneath that. And that's where the taint nothing doctor comes from. It's nothing until you identify. All right, I think that's what you're wanting me to talk about or cover here in closing, is until you identify as to what chiropractic is, until you change the identity of what that is. If you hate and some people hate the word philosophy, if you don't change that identity and then change the value of it, what's the value of that, folks? What's a value to me, right? I got my stories. I can tell stories about the value of a condition. What was the value of my mom's migraines back, and she grew up under Gonstead, and it was Roy Sweat and the upper cervical work that corrected it. So maybe I think we're going to do a show sometime talking about Gonstead himself and techniques. Guess what? There's different values in all of them, but it was upper cervical work that healed, corrected my mom's migraines, and she had suffered for my whole childhood. I lost my mom one day a week, What was that worth to me? What was it worth when Dr. Owen himself had Bell's palsy symptoms and lost the complete control of his left side of his body, and we were in Kansas City, and I had to fly him home with his whole left side's gone. Roy Sweat himself comes down and picks Dad up from the Atlanta airport, takes him up to the office. 3 days later, Dad drives home to Chattanooga at the time, right? And never had Bell's palsy symptoms again.
Mm-hmm.
What was that worth? Was that a jump up on the bar stool moment and just you just got a little crick in the neck, you got a little neck pain? No, something serious took place, right? And guess what? I got a chance to say this to Roy Sweat himself. I was giving him it was a Lifetime Achievement kind of thing award. And I got a chance to tell that little quick story. That story, of course, I elaborated a lot more in front of all his followers, right?
Mm-hmm.
All his students. And I get up there and I do this big thing and I tell this story and I gave him a round of applause, standing ovation, right? As I'm walking off, as we're walking off stage, and I grabbed the mic one more time. I said, "Oh, by the way, Dr. Roy, just wanted to point out, you asked for $50 a visit, which I gladly paid, but $15,000, $20,000 a parent wouldn't have been enough. But thank you anyway." And I walked off the stage, and everybody was like, "Did he just diss Dr. Roy Sweat?" No, I had the best of the best in the world. And he set the value of $50, but $15,000 to $20,000 a parent wouldn't have been enough for me to get my parents back. So, folks, it is not a taint nothing condition. It's a serious condition. You've got serious cases coming in, and that deserves the compliance. That deserves the retention. That deserves doing the CERs right. That deserves doing the POC because that might be the connection to them. And that deserves the reason that you do reevaluations. And that's the reason you learn how to a system like Align that allows you to do the patient compliance. You mentioned the 10-visit checklist. I hate that name. It's the worst name we ever came up with, a checklist. It's not a checklist. It's communication. Yeah. It's relationships. So, folks, that's a lot. We covered a lot. You got something else you want to add?
No, it just got really warm in this room. We've tapped into it today. It's been awesome. It fires
me up, man. Yeah. It does. But this has been a great show, Greg. I appreciate you joining us. And
it's been fun.
Folks, we're going to wrap it up right here for the week. I know I'm going to have you back on here soon. We're going to I want to talk about Gonstead. We've mentioned Gonstead a lot today. We're going to kind of dive into that a little deeper.
Yeah, let's do it.
Talk about the various techniques that are out there and the values that they all bring. But folks, I hope you got something out of this. I know I'm pumped up and inspired about what we do. Hopefully you are too. You are a chiropractor, the greatest profession on this earth. You do more for humanity in one day than most attorneys that I've met personally in my life do in a lifetime. And that's not a shot at attorneys. It's to tell chiropractors what you really are. I appreciate each and every one of you. And I, again, encourage everybody, if you're a listener, you're an AMC member, get your tail to summits.
Yeah.
That's where it happens. It happens at the summits and it happens in the certified training center visits. So make a commitment, be it all 6. Get yourself to 1 or 2 certified training centers. These people open up their doors to you. Think about that. They open up their doors to you. Come on in. So make that commitment to yourself. I will see you at a summit here in the near future, and look forward to talking to you next week. Thanks again. God bless.
Take care.
Follow our show. You can share it with friends, of course, and we'd love for you to contact us at mailbag@amcfamily.com. In addition, you're always invited to attend or join us at a summit. Of course, registration is required. And we would love for you to check out the loads of free content we provide to social media every single week. Until next time.